Right, great. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Today, I'll be presenting with my colleague Patrick, and we'll be discussing the alignment of institutional resource commitment with strategic pedagogical development when institutions go and develop online learning. And what I found quite useful was in the last presentation, the experience of colleagues from Glasgow University, Singapore, in terms of their faculty resistance. So we'll be looking at that today as well. So to give a bit of a background, in the last 5 years or so, there's been about 58% growth in online learning within the UK higher education institutions. Part of it was driven by the post-COVID environment, in which suddenly all the academics were expected to become learning technologists and learning designers overnight, which some of us succeeded. And then part of this growth was driven by the profitability, because online learning generally it costs 40% lower to deliver than the on-campus experience. And the post-Brexit decline in student number also affected it. Now, with this development, what we want to do is kind of take us back about 5 years before COVID, where there was a lot of talks about academic workload imbalance and how we are expected to kind of teach and do research and do all the administrative stuff as well. So those discussions were still underway, and suddenly COVID, and then we started developing online programs. So this workload imbalance have kind of blown slightly out of proportion when academics are now expected to do online teaching as well, develop online contents. And when this universities in our study, what we discovered was when universities started developing online, they discovered that there is a digital literacy gap. Academics are academics, they have got their own area of expertise. They are not really expert in learning technologies or the use of it, or of creating a good learning environment or an experience for online students. So there was quite a lot of that. Now, different universities acted differently based on this realization, and we ended up with this various models used within the UKHEs and how they develop and how they run their online learning. So the purpose of our study was to kind of go out and see what these models are and how does it work in terms of the university's commitment, the resources they have, how does it work in long term in terms of their pedagogical development and learning from it. And that's essentially what we were trying to do. So what we discovered was majority of the Russell Group tends to use OPM outsourcing. That is the complete outsourcing of the online provision. Here in the bullet point, we're calling it external partnership model. And here, essentially what happens is the university will go and give the entire provision to a private firm. The private firm will develop the resources, will do the recruitment, will run the courses as well, will hire the tutors and academics outside of the university to do that. We also saw that there are other two models used as well. One, what we are calling a centralized model. This model is where the university invests in its infrastructure, hires teams of learning technologists, teams of program designers or module designers, and try to do everything in-house. And that includes marketing the program, recruitment as well, running the program, using their existence expertise within their academic teams to develop these programs and run. And then we had a bit of a decentralized model where a university may hire teams of learning technologies or a company which will develop the content, but the university might run it themselves. So essentially, they are working with these partners to develop those online contents. And then once they are developed, that the partnership is over, and then they run it, these models. And essentially, when we looked at these models, the key thing that came out of it was the choice between quality, speed, and cost. Now we can choose two of them, but we can't choose all three. And we saw that certain universities, I won't say the word compromised, but they chose certain two and then left the other one on the side. To give an example of that, if a university goes for in-house macro management in terms of developing their online resources, the timeline is quite long. It might take them minimum of 18 months to actually be able to be in a position to deliver those programs. Once they have created those programs, developed their content, the relative cost from there onward is quite low. But before development starts, they need to invest heavily in the infrastructure, in the upskilling of staff, etc. But when we compare to a university, let's say, opt for complete outsourcing OPM model, they can move very swiftly. Within 6 months, their program will be up for recruitment. It will be running. They don't need to worry about any extra burden on their staff. However, then they will have to share 30% in revenue approximately with their partner. And that 30% stays as long as those programs are running. Now, I've given you like a 3 major themes, but when we actually looked at it, we found that there's combination of these 3 themes, which then ends up in 7 different models. But these are the 3 key areas. Now, mixture of these 3 key areas can kind of like, create those 7 models. For instance, university can start with OPM, then move towards in-house, etc. as well. So in terms of going back to these models, now there are pros and cons attached with each model. So when you look at the centralized model, then essentially universities have to deal with their digital literacy gap. They need to train their academic staff in terms of how to deliver and design online learning. They need to have their learning technologies. They need to have a very huge high upfront cost before they even start developing anything. And then eventually the profitability of it is quite a lot down the line. So the time of break even is normally about 1.5 to 2 years when the universities hit the break even point. But what happens in the centralized model is that there's a certain degree of skill development within the faculty and within the professional services in IT as well. So any investment, the other side parts of university like TNE and on-campus delivery, they also benefit from it. And going back to the last presentation, what we have seen is those kind of universities sometimes tilt towards offering blended learning or some sort of form of blended learning fairly easily as well. And then if we compare it to external partnership, what we have discovered is, although it's very, very quick, there's not a lot of upfront cost involved. The programs are out there fairly in 6 months' time. However, there is a lack of alignment and mindset between the firms which are providing those qualifications on behalf of the university and the university's academics and university's administrative and leadership team. Because on one side, you will have academics working with the project managers, which are coming from your OPM provider. And normally there is quite a lot of breakdown in relationship in these cases as well. So, moving forward, I'll pass it on to Patrick, who will now kind of take us to what our findings are and what we are suggesting based on our study, what universities ought to do.
Thank you very much, Fawad. And these are in no particular order, but the first one has to be strategic planning, because a decision has got to be made to ensure that an institution moves forward with a coherent online learning strategy. There cannot be any pilot or scaling up unless it has been done in complete alignment with budget and staffing plans and a full resource commitment. And from there can be decisions made about the model fit and looking to determine if they are going to try to take some of the advantages which Fawad has just spoken of from one model, or are trying to hybridize in some way. But if they're looking for a centralized model for consistency, then that is going to require considerably more resources. But a carefully managed partnership can allow for much more more flexibility as far as the internal resource is concerned, because much of it is being resourced. However, with the strategic planning and the model fit chosen, there is a requirement to ensure that there is the appropriate level of dedicated support. We saw that stressed very, very much the focus put on learning technologists and the interaction with faculty. There has to be a support structure in place, which is one which realizes the current deficits, a deficit analysis almost taking place of the technological efficiencies and the technological capabilities of the faculty. Because if everybody's learning technology, they're perhaps falling short on the pedagogic drive that they had beforehand. So we have to ensure that pedagogy is not compromised. Fawad refuse to speak of compromises. Unfortunately, it is in this slide. So dedicated support is one which scaffolds the support available to academics to ensure that they are not trying to become hybrid technologists, that specialisms exist. And what we're ensuring here is faculty engagement, that faculty are engaged in the process from the start, that the appropriate training is in place, and that there are incentives and recognition, so that the institutional ambition is not again compromised or even arrested by the fact that we are trying to drive a different form of delivery from that which is the comfort zone for academics who have grown through a very face-to-face and traditional system. Fawad. Thank you. So practical implications. There are challenges and recommendations to each one of these. The resource constraint applies directly to in the speed cost, quality speed cost trade-off. The resource constraint very, very much about cost, and the challenge is there are upfront costs and staff costs can be extremely high. So to ensure that everybody understands that this is a strategic development and one which can be constant and very sustainable resource stream in the revenue stream in the future, our recommendation is that you start with pilot projects on successful programs, and we use that very overt and promotable success to start scaling, both as far as promotion is concerned, but also the investment across other programs, and indeed, perhaps if you're starting with one faculty, scaling across other faculties. So before scale and scope can be elaborated and expanded upon, then there is the necessity for a very promotable pilot to be able to show success. And then the change management. There is always going to be staff resistance to something or a lack of digital skills. We can be talking about technology acceptance modeling. We can look at where are you on the Dunning-Kruger continuum here. But if people perceive a lack of digital skills, then that can hinder implementation. Therefore, the change management has got to bring in the aspects of the previous slide, those practical implications of introducing dedicated support, which will facilitate rather than hinder implementation. So we offer professional development, and we also offer a system whereby what is being put in place is very transparent and the access to it is easily demonstrated to staff, and that just as with the scaling, early quick wins are demonstrated and they are highlighted and focused upon, so that we continued with that momentum of buy-in from faculty and from engaging with technologists and building those appropriate relationships. And then again, with technology, if people are almost presuming that technology is taking over from pedagogy, we have got to ensure that we are demonstrably maintaining our quality standards at the scale, a new scale, not just for the numbers of programs that are students that are involved, but the programs and faculties who are engaging with this new form of distance learning or technological learning. So clear quality standards have got to be in place, and they've got to be translatable across different platforms. So the sharing of best practice and regular review of online courses for improvement, just as we have for our standard programs, that they do not become anything other than the standard by which the quality is maintained for the institution, not for one stream or another of it. And of course, that requires that there is a sustainability, that programs become viable long term. There is nothing that shows to the outside world the fact that we are not maintaining, sustaining, and perpetually upkeeping our programs than something which looks tired when you click onto it, something which looks out of sort with the rest of the market. So we need to align our online offerings with market demand and ensure that they are absolutely aligned with the content and the technology which is being demonstrated on the home programs. Okay, Fawad? So, in conclusion, alignment is absolutely key. Our study just shows that any successful online distance learning provision requires a very strong alignment and a very strong institutional commitment to ensure that that alignment takes place. And this alignment starts with funding. This must not be seen as just some simple bolt-on, which is almost an experiment. It has got to be built within a strategic pedagogic development policy, and the infrastructure has got to build with that. And then there must not be a set of perhaps different policies which are around academic integrity, for instance, which are different from those that are in mainstream. Pedagogical innovation, pedagogical support has got to be aligned with the standard and traditional offerings. And then as we move forwards with scale and scope, there has got to be a continuous evaluation of online programs and their outcomes, because it is only through looking at that and that Kaizen aspect to it, if you like, that there is a refinement which is taking place, which is allowing for constant improvement. So additional research and, of course, the tools are being built into all of our tracking and engagement systems. We'll be able to show student success and how different pedagogic or different engagement strategies have worked, and therefore allowing us to fine-tune the individual strategies and approaches that we're utilizing. But quite importantly, and as Fawad said, yes, there are three major approaches of centralized, decentralized, and partnership, and that breaks out into 7, but that 7 could equally be broken out further, no doubt, because there is no one-size-fits-all model, and there are different components which might be integrated by any one institution, as long as they are executed properly with the appropriate support and the clarity of some strategic vision. These must not be operational knee-jerk reactions. And the institution, if it is building this in the serious, sustained way as an intended revenue stream across many years, has got to do this in line with its current strengths. And of course, all of this is once again saying it is a core strategic initiative. It is strategic, not operational. The resources and the pedagogy and the little formula of quality, speed, and cost have all got to be aligned. But this has got to be a strategic decision which is taken by the institution and has got to be integrated within an institutional rather than just a single faculty or program as a pilot mentality. It has got to be strategic.